Hello, teams. Welcome to our training number 3. Today, we're going to talk about a little bit about Brazilian culture and among other things. But I want to welcome you to our training. We're going to start right in with Portuguese and our Portuguese lesson of the day. This is some just helpful Portuguese phrases that you can be practicing and learning at home. Again, we always encourage you guys to learn more Portuguese. So when you're there, you can interact and you feel like they're connecting with you. You do not need to worry about speaking fluently because I don't know if I speak fluently and I'm from there. So, but you can learn some words. So you're always going to feel like, oh, I wish I had learned more. But this is how we're going to do it. So our first phrase is one that you're going to hear a lot. You're going to see on t-shirts, and it's very easy, which is good morning. And I'm going to ask my friends that are joining us live to unmute themselves for this section. I would love to hear you guys. Okay. So I think this one you already know if you joined us for our last training, but I'm going to say once and you're going to repeat it with me. Okay. Bom dia. Can we do it together?
Bom dia.
Ah, see, Portuguese speakers. Okay, now afternoon, we're gonna say boa tarde. Now listen up. This is how we say in the Amazon. The R is always like open when it comes between vowels, tarde. But if you say boa tarde, they know what you're saying because other parts of Brazil, they roll their R's a little bit more. So that's okay. Don't worry about that one. Let's say it. Boa tarde. Boa tarde. Good job. Good job. Okay, next one is going to be good night or good evening. We only have one way of saying it. So this is one very common mistake of Portuguese speakers because sometimes when we want to wish you a good evening, we're just going to say good night because that's closer to boa noite in our mind. So, but boa noite is how you say good evening or good night. So let's do it together. Boa noite. Boa noite. And just in case you're new here, bom and boa are the same word. It's the word good, but it depends if the word coming is going to be a feminine or a masculine word. I know dia, I guess, is a boy, and night is a girl. Who would have known? I don't know. I don't know who came up with that. But okay, now you're trying to meet someone in the villages and you're going to ask them their names. Now, listen, this is one good one for you to practice because when you ask someone for their name here in the US, you don't ask them, what is your name? Do you? You don't. You ask, what's your name? What's your name? So in Portuguese, it's pretty similar. So we're going to practice it slow and then we're going to practice all together as a phrase, okay? Let's try word per word. Can you try reading it with me? Qual é teu nome?
Nome.
Someone said nombre, not nombre. Nome. Okay, now let's try it all together as a phrase, making it a question, okay? Qual é o seu nome? Qual é o seu nome? Qual é o seu nome? Good, 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 good. So we're going to say it as a phrase. What is your name? Okay, then you can answer. Meu nome é. Priscilla, when there is like the accents on the letters, that messes me up. So here's a quick tip. When there is like just like a little head like this, it's always an open sound. Eh. If there was a little head like this, then it would be e. We're not going to do it that way. It's going to be eh. Meu nome é. Let's do it together. Meu nome é. And when you say your name, you're going to use your first name. We're going to learn more there about in culture in a second. But the last phrase for the day, oh, that's easy. That's a word. It's when you say bye and it's going to be sad because you're going to meet everyone in the villages and you're going to say ciao. 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 Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Okay, perfect. Now we're gonna transition into our Brazilian culture section. Feel free to mute yourselves, take notes. You're gonna save your questions for the end. We're happy to answer. Okay, Brazilian culture. First, a little bit about Brazil. Before we started recording, we were talking about Brazil being so big and very long. If you can find on the map, you're gonna see São Paulo in the bottom, like right there. That's Rio right there. And we're gonna be all the way up there where the green is. We're gonna fly into the state of Amazonas in the city of Manaus. That's where I grew up. That's a big city in the middle of the jungle. That's where we're gonna fly into. Awesome. I think there's a picture of Manaus. There you go. You see the river, you see the boats, but then there's some Burger King and McDonald's somewhere in there. So that's Manaus, and that's where you're gonna go. From Manaus, we're gonna go into the villages. Yes, some villages look like this. Some villages can look a little bit bigger, but they all are connected by rivers. So that's why the main transportation is boats. Even going to school, the kids take their school boats to school. I love it. I love that yellow school boat. Awesome. So before we dive in culture, I need you to keep this in mind, okay? This is something I say every time because I don't want you to get, your heart set in one thing. Just remember that culture is general. We're going to talk about general ways of culture, but culture is also about individual preference, right? Not every American likes apple pie, correct? Some like pumpkin pie. I don't know why. I would rather have apple pie, but because there's something called individual preferences. But if you ask a foreigner like me that grew up watching American movies, I think everybody likes apple pies because that's just a general idea of culture. So keep that in mind. We're going to talk about general things, but there are individual preferences. The second thing is culture is not always right and wrong. How I do something doesn't mean that it's always right and wrong. Sometimes it's just different. I had a meeting with Leslie and she was saying, sometimes it's just not right and wrong about a trip that we had. Sometimes it's just different. Keep that in mind. That's good for your life too. That's a good life. Not everything sometimes is just different, especially when you walk into a new culture as an adult. Some things you're like, I never thought about doing that way. And then the third thing is give people the benefit of the doubt. Even if you've been there a million times or if you're going for the first time, this is a coach. I've been here for 15 years. And every week I'm like, did y'all do what? But you said what? We're always learning because culture evolves. So keep in mind to give people the benefit of the doubt. I always share this story about me with my daughter at Whole Foods eating lunch. And my daughter speaks Portuguese. She's being trained to be a translator on the boat. And she was asking me for a knife. And the way that you say knife in Portuguese, people were very concerned for my daughter's safety. Because the way that I asked her, like, so what do you want? And she's pointing, I'm like, do you want a faca? And everybody looked at me because that's how you say it in Portuguese, F-A-C-A, faca. And they're like, no, she's not doing that. She's not saying that. And I had to explain, well, that's my language. That's a word in my language. So if you're walking into a new language, give people the benefit of the doubt. Okay, we're going to dive in now. First thing I said, we speak Portuguese. We are colonized by Portugal. We're going to talk more about that later, but there's a lot of Portuguese culture that plays into our culture to this day. Portuguese is not the only language in Brazil. We actually have our indigenous tribes and our natives that speak their own language, have their own culture. Nowadays, we have the joy of joining some of these brothers and sisters that are preaching to the indigenous group. So keep in mind, we do speak Portuguese. That's our main language. but we have other languages in Brazil as well. And we have also the joy of bringing Bibles in their native language. So that's something I love about Amazon Outreach. Next thing about Brazil is that the base of everything we do is relationships. Relationships are something very important for Brazilians. We are usually, like I told you, a first-based name culture. When you meet someone, unless they're much older than you or they have some kind of authority, even so, you only gonna know their first name. In fact, Amazon Reach took that to heart. Our emails, you've noticed, is our first name and then the initial of our last name. I knew Phyllis for a long time before I came here, and I didn't even know her last name was Woodward, because that's how we introduce ourselves on the boat. It's first name only. And sometimes your first name, it's going to be hard enough because it's so different than Portuguese name. So keep it simple, keep it formal. But that's a little something about Brazil. Relationships. The other thing about Brazil is, well, we went all the way down, DJ. I believe it was our love language, if I'm not mistaken. Sarah? We're going back. Yes, there you go. Okay, we talked about relationships. Sarah, would you go back one more time? Just one. I want to show something on. Okay, so when I bring that concept of relationships to the river, I want you to keep in mind that relationships, family play a huge role in the villages. When we go to a village and we ask, what's the size of the village? They're not going to say population 1,432. They're going to say there are 10 families here. There are 15 families here. I went to, one missionary said, there's 500 families in that area. I said, is that like 3 billion people? How many of that? Because the families are usually very big. So I was just joking with him, but like when they say family, they don't mean just the family unit. Their family unit usually is consisted by multi-generational homes. So there's grandma, grandpa, uncle, and that's all beautiful in Kumbaya until we know that that can be at some point a vulnerable space for kids. Because if you're living in a house that has 3 rooms, 2 rooms, and everybody's sleeping in the same room, that could put kids in a vulnerable space. So keep that in mind. As much as our culture is so much about relationships, we all know that relationships can be messy too. They can be messy too. And that can also play another role. And I want you to keep, especially the girls, they're going to be speaking to women. The guys are going to be speaking to man, because so much of our culture is relationships. When you don't understand your identity in Christ, you think that your identity is in being a wife or a friend or a daughter. And once you lose that, you feel like you've lost yourself. So if we're going to be speaking about identity, or like how our identity is really to be children of God, you know, and be followers of Jesus. And life changes and things get lost on the way. People disappoint us, but Jesus doesn't, you know. So I think that's very important. Again, that's another messy part of being such a relational culture. So keep that in mind about Brazilian culture. If you have any questions, we'd love to answer any. Okay, our love language. If you've been to Brazil, you know, if you've been to South America, we love, love, love to hug, which Texans do too. Come on, people. I love living here because you know, people are so friendly, and they're like Brazilians sometimes in that sense. But when I go to the villages, I need you to keep something in mind. At first, especially if it's a new village or newer village, they're gonna be a little bit shy. They need a minute to kind of size you up, like, because culturally, we always learn that Americans are very cold, distant people. I don't know why we had this idea, but we do. So they're not gonna come and hug you unless there's someone that already knows the team. Like, I mean, Union here, you're gonna be with Phyllis. There'll be a lot of villagers hugging Phyllis because Phyllis, she's very famous on the river. But if they don't know you, they might take a second. But once they warm up to you, especially the children, as you can see in the pictures, they love, love, love to be close to you, for you to play with them, hold them. And the moms love, there's no like childcare. So they love to just hand their little babies. And there's people that go on trips just to hold those babies. I know you guys, I know you love Jesus, but you love holding those babies too. And then the other way of that touch plays a huge play on this trip is on our Amazon salon with the girls and the women. We get to paint their nails, touch their hair, and that's very special for them as well. Okay, love language next. Religion. Okay, this is when I need to make a little segue. We talked about Brazilian culture and Brazil being a colony of Portugal. So a lot of our religion came from our immigrants, the people that started Brazil. And that would be the Portuguese, that would be Africans, that would be other, we have the biggest colony of Japanese out of Japan. So we have all of these influences, and that have played a key role in our religion beliefs in Brazil. So historically in Brazil, they believe, and that's a very, saying in Brazil, it's very normal to say, if you're Brazilian, you're Catholic. Now, what does that mean? I don't know if you know, but there's many, many, many Catholic churches. There's not only one, there's 4 main Catholic churches. And from those 4, there's other denominations, many other denominations. But with the Catholicism we see in Brazil, especially in the villages, it's a Catholicism that's mixed with their indigenous beliefs, the indigenous witchcraft, African witchcraft, paired with a lot of superstition. They the believers of saints. And when I tell you superstition, I'm going to give you an example. In Brazil, they believe that Saint Anthony is the saint of love. So they put Saint Anthony upside down until he gives them a boyfriend. So there's a lot of, those are, for us, loose translators called a sympathy. It's like little witchcraft things that you do so things turn out to your favor. That plays a lot in Brazil. And inside of the Catholic Church, for every deity, for every saint, there's an entity. Entity is a demon. So they're paired. So it's a very, what we call syncretism with other religions. So it's not the pure Catholicism that okay? But what we see mostly in the villages, and this is what really concerned us, is that they call themselves Catholic, but they don't have access to actually all the teachings because there's not enough priests to come. So a lot of them will see a priest once a year. And we actually had some of them reporting to us that after COVID, that's even less because everything is paid for, the weddings, the baptism, the few priests can only make to the village that can afford to pay them. So for me and you, that getting baptized and getting married, it's something beautiful, right? And we get to do it. You just sign up at your church. You put a shirt on that says, I'm living through Christ, and get baptized. For them, this is part of their salvation. This is something very, very important because in the Catholic Church in Brazil, I need you to understand this. Jesus doesn't save. The church saves. So you got to follow the dogmas of the church. And Jesus is a co-redeemer with Mary. So I'm telling you all this, and this is a lot of information, but I need you to understand that a lot of the people you're going to meet are the sweetest people, and they love God and they want to know about Jesus, but they believe that they cannot pray to God. They believe that they can't not confess their sins direct to God. They need that third party that might come once a year, once every 2 years, 3 years. So in the middle of the night, if their kids get sick, they cannot even pray to God because they believe they have to go through a third party. So your mission on this trip, and I need you to start praying about it right now, is God, let me have the opportunity to tell someone that they can actually have a relationship with Christ, that they can actually pray direct to God. We're not, sharing about denominations, church. You just want to let at least one person know that they can be friends with God and they can pray directly to him. That's one of the main things, and that's what I need to know. Okay, now, after that religion, then we talk about the next religion in Brazil, which is another very strong religion, which is soccer. Yes, maybe stronger. Maybe people go more to that one than to the other one. Soccer. In the villages, they all gonna look different. After you go for a while, they all look the same, but they all look different. There's only one thing in common with each village you're gonna go. They all have a place to play soccer. Soccer is a big deal in Brazil, but it's especially a big deal in the villages because it's one of their only main ways of entertainment. And if they don't have a ball, they will makeshift a ball because they will be playing soccer. And that's one of the gifts we get to give to the villages, but that's also one way that we get to share the gospel with them. For our next training, Steve's going to be here and he's going to share a little bit more about how we use the e-ball. I'm going to also send you a video showing how you can use a ball, a soccer ball, to evangelize, to do evangelism on the river. Okay, soccer, and then customs. Okay, I was just talking about that with a friend that went to Brazil. It was an American person that went to Brazil, and she said one of the things that struck the most about Brazilians is that they talk really up close. Especially in the villages, these people are living cramped up in 2-3 bedrooms. We don't have the same sense of personal space. In fact, the concept personal space is not even a concept in Brazil. In fact, it was really hard during COVID because they didn't understand that concept at all. 6 feet, what is that? No, we don't do personal space. So that's one of the things you're going to notice about Brazilian culture. Sometimes they get really close to you. The other thing about Brazilian culture is we tend to run late to things. Like really late to things. Especially in the villages, they are not pressed to like appointments and time. They know what they have to do that day, what crops they have to tend to, what time the fish needs to be getting. Like they're not really checking on the watches. Most of them are not even going to have watches on them. So keep that in mind. If you're feeling stressed out, we're supposed to start 2 on the clock. Nothing's going to start 2 on the clock, okay? Unless you're on the boat. On the boat, we honor those times. But on the river, you're going to be on the Holy Spirit time. And I always say, if you have a problem like with being flexible, fluid, Leslie has a really good way of saying, what is it, Leslie? Fat. Share with us about fat.
I just tell my team that they have to be fat. They have to be flexible, adaptable, and teachable, FAT. And on my last trip in January, we had to be so fat, we had to move to a different boat. So, but yes, we have to be fat.
Wonderful. And if you're one of those people, they're like, I can't be flexible. I need everything on time, on my way. And when I want to say that this trip is for you. Yeah. The Holy Spirit wants to work in your heart. And that's exactly why you're going. Because we all need to be flexible on mission trips, especially this one. but it all works as, you know, a well-oiled machine. So don't worry about it. But when you're in the villages and you feel like, oh, we should start, it's time. I want to challenge you to actually take that time to get to know someone one-on-one. There's no one around. Take that time to pray for the people to come and intercede for the rest of the trip. So don't waste the time with like anxiousness or comparing cultures, because it goes by so fast. Okay, so I think we ended customs. Is there something else about? Okay, now I'm gonna pass it to Sarah, and she's gonna talk a little bit about travel medical insurance.
All right. Hello. We do, your trip does include travel medical insurance, and it is for travel for coverage for potential incidences in Brazil. And it's for medical, so if you want trip cancellation or interruption, then you'll need to do it. You'll need to get that yourself. Sorry, I have a little girl here. My granddaughter. All accidents that potentially could happen in Brazil, you'll probably need to get a doctor's note. We have a doctor on the boat, or you'll maybe see somebody, but that's important to have for when you come back to the US. So just keep that in mind if you do have some injury. You will get an email with your medical travel card, and you just a few days prior to your trip. So make sure you print that or save it as a picture to your phone, something, just so you have that. Do know that your coverage is greatly reduced if you're over 70. And all of the full policy details can be found in important team info in our resources page of our website. So just keep that in mind. And now, Priscilla, back to you for translator relations.
Well, I'm actually on that picture right there, but Phyllis will be talking about translator relations.
Oh yeah, sorry, Priscilla.
Phyllis, you're muted.
Oh, I said, hi, y'all. I'm Phyllis, and I am so excited to be here today to help you get trained for this trip. And I'm just so excited that some of you are probably new, some of you are not, but I'm going to go over a little bit about working with translators. If you've never worked with a translator, we have the most amazing group of translators on our boat that you'll ever meet. In fact, by the end of the trip, you'll want to adopt a few of them and bring them home with you. But I just want to tell you a few things about the translators that I kind of didn't know the first time I went. In fact, it took me a while to really get to know them well enough to know some of their fears and some of the truths about some of our translators. And one is that when I went on a first trip, I learned a few words in Portuguese, and I would say them to villagers, and then right away they thought I was fluent in Portuguese, and they would just go, and I was like, wait a minute, that's just all I know. You can't say anything more. But the translators are not quite that exaggerated, but a lot of them, it might be their first time ever translating, and they are so nervous, and they know English, but they might not know it great. And so when you approach a translator, there's going to be some that are like Priscilla that really you can talk fast with, you can talk deep with, you can share things and they will totally be able to follow you. But a lot of them, you need to speak a little bit slower. You need to take your time, ask them, ask them if they understand what you're saying or not before you move on. This is the thing that's coming up right now, is that to treat them like family and be patient if their English is not a high level. So, just be like they're just part of the team. They are a part of the team, and if it weren't for them, we couldn't get anything accomplished. Um, oh, this is another one. You will find a favorite translator, and you will become buddies, and you will want that because that person understands you, so you feel like oh, if I'm going to talk to the women's ministry, for instance, oh, I have to have, Priscilla to always be my translator because she just gets me and that kind of thing. But you just really can't do that because they might need to be needed in medical more than they need to be over here. The translators have a head translator that leads them and really helps with your team leader to kind of figure out where the translators need to be at any given moment. But I promise they're all amazing, so try not to cling to one. Um, oh, this is a big one. Brazilians in general are very service oriented. They like to please you. They want to make you happy. They don't want anybody to be upset. And so they are peacemakers and they are servants. And so when you tell them that you want to do something, they will try to make it happen. Even if that thing that you're trying to make happen is anti-cultural, wouldn't do the best for the ministry. So before you tell them that you want to do anything, ask them if it's okay. Say, hey, I want to explain this to somebody, or I want to ask them a question, and they'll say, oh, no, 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 don't do that. So just tell them, be honest with me and that kind of thing. So just be sure that you're not just telling people what to do, even if you think it's a good thing. Make sure you run it by them first. And you'll want to give them all everything that they need and want, but please don't give any gifts or money directly to translators. We will take up I call it a love offering because you will fall in love with these people. And we take up a love offering at the very end of the trip, and it's divided equally between the translators and the crew on the boat, which you'll also fall in love with. And so the crew and the translators will all get a nice tip or love offering at the end of the trip. Oh, this is kind of a funny one because, we have a boat called the Love Boat, the Amore Esperanza, but we ask you not to pursue like romantic relationships on the boat while you're in doing ministry. And the funny thing is, I've been with Amazon Outreach since the beginning for 25 years, basically. And I can probably name you 25 marriages today that resulted from a trip on the Amazon. So not saying that relationships can't happen as a result of this trip, but try not to make that the focus. In fact, I just met a guy yesterday, as a matter of fact, that he said that he's engaged because a lady on his trip, his first trip last summer, a lady said, "Oh my gosh, you need to meet this girl when we get back home." She introduced him to this girl, and they got engaged, and they're getting married in May. So I've heard a lot of stories like that, and then we're going to talk about working with, working with translators as you're speaking. If you can flip to that next slide. Um, this is kind of fun in a way because let's say, for instance, you're giving your testimony. What we suggest before you even give the testimony is get with your translator and tell them your testimony. That way, that translator can get a review of what you're saying. And if they have any questions about words you're using, or maybe it's not culturally right, they will let you know at that time. Keep it short and simple. I used to teach kindergarten, and I used to say, you know, when you're talking to villagers and using translators, you've got to keep it really simple. Just be direct. Um, use simple words. Don't use big words because the translator might not even know those words in English. And so just keep it short and sweet and simple. Um, you know, we've had all kinds of kind of crazy things that have happened because people didn't do this. And when you're talking, the biggest mistake I see over and over by people that are not used to speaking with a translator is that they speak to the translator instead of speaking to your audience. Let's say you have even a group of children, or you're speaking at women's ministry, let's say, and you have a group of ladies in front of you. I see people all the time, they'll say, my name is Phyllis, and I live in, you know, in United States. And then they really almost never look at the audience. They're just constantly looking over at their translator. And so make sure you're making that really strong eye contact. Talk to people like you talk to them at home. Use your hands, and you can see in the picture how the girl's bending over and the translator's bending over. And so talk to people, use your eyes, make eye contact, speak to them, and don't even take your eyes off of them. When the translator's talking, you know, look at the people and see what the reactions are, because that's when they're hearing what you said. So if you're looking at them when they're hearing what you said, it's better to you know, be making that eye contact then. Yeah, that's good.
And now, thank you, Phyllis. We're going to talk about boat life. And just so you know, boat life is kind of its own unique life that is really a great part of your trip. And if you follow along what Priscilla and Leslie shared about, you know, giving people the benefit of the doubt, using, you know, being just flexible, and, you know, don't just, you know, not necessarily assume, but nobody is really trying to hurt your feelings. So just keep that in mind when you're sharing the space, because the quarters are just a little bit cramped sometimes. As you can see, you sleep in hammocks and you are right beside each other. But, you know, that's also a good thing. It's nice. You become a family on the boat. So it's good. But again, it's just be flexible. And so hammocks are one of the best things about our boat. Love sleeping in a hammock. Typically it's open aired unless it's storming, then they'll drop tarps, but it's very, it's a really good way to sleep. And so that's nice. And then one of the precious times on the boat is quiet time, usually first thing in the morning. Great coffee on the boat. It's there. I've never not had it. So it is awesome. They even have warm milk. Oh, it's delicious. And it's a really good opportunity for you to find a little spot on the boat, do your devotional, pray about your day. It is an excellent part of boat life. Keep in mind that it's two languages. We have Portuguese and English. And so boat life is bilingual. It's a great experience. When we do worship, we will be singing in English and in Portuguese. So just keep that in mind. And it is one of the great things about the boat. Meals, the food is delicious. You will not have any problem finding something that you will want to eat. So just keep that in mind. And one of my big things is don't like waste for food. So I always say, just take a little bit of it. If you don't know what it is, try it. You can always come back for seconds. So just keep that in mind too. And we have usually you have a big team and a lot of crew. So take just the amount that you're going to eat. You can always go back and get more. So our boat we have a great crew, and our crew keeps our boat spotless. And so one of the ways that that is done is we have boat shoes. So bring a pair of flip-flops or some comfy shoe that you can just put on while you're on the boat. Your outdoor shoes. I'm from Canada, so schools, you have your indoor shoes and your outdoor shoes. And so you will always take them off when you come on the boat and switch your shoes. That keeps it clean. And I wouldn't recommend barefoot. I would recommend a pair of shoes. So just keep that in mind. Showers, our boat has, I forget how many bathrooms. Plenty of bathrooms, plenty of showers. We even have some outdoor showers like that are pictured there. Just know that if you want to use your outdoor shower, the women should have one-piece bathing suits. It's not let's be conservative, so just keep that in mind. But it's a great opportunity to shower out on the back of the boat. Our crew is amazing. And like Phyllis said, you're going to fall in love with them. So and they love to communicate with you. So, and even if you don't know Portuguese, you can always, thank them for a meal or for doing your laundry. It's just just remember, bom dia to them it's nice. A smile goes a long way. So just, keep in mind, show your appreciation, because they are amazing and they look after all of your day-to-day details. So, and then the last day on our boat is a real fun time. This team obviously went all out for a party with so many decorations. You don't have to do this, but we like to have just a party kind of at the end of the trip where we get to serve the crew. So you'll find that we go through the line first every time. At the end, we like to prepare a meal and serve the crew and the cooks and everything. So that's really good. And then and I've been on a number of trips, and every trip is kind of different. And what I learned on our last trip, that the people kind of help out with the dishes. So just keep that in mind too. Your leader will probably maybe do a sign-up sheet or something so that you can help with clean up at the end of each meal. Because if you think about it, each meal, 3 times a day, and you have all those dishes, and we don't have dishwashers on the boat, which that would be great, but we don't. So just keep that in mind, that you will probably have the opportunity to get to know your team better by doing dishes. So that's great. It's actually a win-win. But again, just remember, be flexible, give everybody the benefit of the doubt. Boat life is amazing. So our next one is dress code, and we'll give it back to Priscilla.
I'm going to talk about dress code, and we were thinking about how we're going to explain to you what would be appropriate to wear on the boat without being, too much, like too annoying. So we thought about, who would be a good examples. So we thought about the Kardashians, but not really. But it's called Keeping Up with the Dress Code. And we're going to use them to tell you what not to do, okay? So first thing, keep it simple, okay? Keep it simple. You're going to leave your Prada and your Gucci and your, Louis Vuitton. You're going to leave those at home, because we're going with one focus, and you don't want to be worrying about, I lost this, I forgot that. Keep it as simple as possible. Just consider the culture. A lot of the people there do not have access to things. So we want to keep it simple and undistractable as well. The other thing is keep it cool. Consider the climate. If you feel like something, like any material, any fabric, it's going to be hot, it's going to be way hotter there. I would keep it light, get light fabrics, the tried and true. I would even say keep it light on the clothes because black clothes attracts more heat. Priscilla, but I only wear black, then that's fine. That's what you want to do, that's fine. But just by experience, you want to use like light things. I usually even take things that I leave it behind. So just keep it in mind. It's hot. It's hot. I always say that Amazon has 2 seasons. It's hot and hot with rain. That's it. Now, once in a blue moon, there'll be a wind, or it will kind of get a little bit cold after the rain. Then, if you're someone that tends to get cold, I would say just bring with you like a light windbreaker, just to have it at night. If you would like to have in case there is something cold. Someone asked me today at church, Priscilla, does it ever get cold? No, it never does, because when it does, once in every so many years, the fishes actually die because the temperature has to be just right for them. So it never gets too cold, but once in a while it does. So if you tend to get cold, and if you're going to be cold in the airport, please do bring a light jacket. And then the last one is keep it appropriate. Consider the purpose. This is one that it's hard to describe, but it's so very important for you, because one thing that you do not want to do is get to the trip and realize you have nothing to wear. Because it was not, appropriate. I always like to say that modesty is not the length of your clothes. It's not how much the clothes covers you. Modesty is the position of your heart. Where is your heart positioned? Because we know if we want to be distracting, we know what our intent was on putting the half shirt and the half shorts, So on this trip, especially on this trip, we're going to ask you to keep it appropriate. And I've had people come to me and say, Priscilla, but I went there and the people in the villages were wearing really short shorts, and some translators, not approved by me, were not wearing long. Well, what did you do? Did you do what was asked of you? Then as a mom and a preschool teacher, once I was, I'm going to say, you did it right. If you know what you got to do, if that's the position of your heart, that's all you can do. We can't force people to do other things. But between you and the Lord, what is the position of your heart. But we're here to help you. So we're going to show you some things that we ask you to do on the boat. So we're going to avoid these. Crop tops. We're not going to have any exposed belly. Inappropriate graphics. I actually had a girl on my trip that we had to send her back because she had a pole dancing shirt. It happens, people. It happens. The other thing, low riding. I put it there. I'm like, nah, that's right. We're early 2000s. Well, it's back, and we're not going to be doing on the boat. We're going to leave that in the early 2000s, okay? Tight fits. We're going to avoid those. Spaghetti straps. We're going to avoid those. Shorty shorts. Guys, it's back for the boys. We're going to leave that in the 70s, okay? Where they should have never come out of. Okay. Low cut. Also, we're not going to be having those. So we're going to avoid this. Priscilla, so what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to wear? Well, that's the next slide. What we're going to do is we're going to do long tops. Okay. T-shirts. There have appropriate saying or no saying at all. Bermudas, longer Bermudas, dry fit shirts because they tend to be good for the heat, and long shorts. We're going to be doing that. Now, I'm going to give you some real life example of what people actually wear on the boat. So this, as you can see, that's actually a young adult's trip, and you can see the girls. You see sunglasses is a must, all tied up with the sunscreen. So don't forget to wear those. You see hats, you see the shorts, capris, t-shirts, Yep. Just regular clothes. We don't ask you to wear like super long skirts. We did have one trip this year that they had to wear, and they all were very compliant. And but we do that because we have one focus, which is to share the word of God. Okay. So these are some ideas for you. Now we're gonna wrap it up with the next steps. Things you're gonna be doing next with Phyllis Woodward.
Okay, now I think our next training date is April 14th, and it'll also be at 3:30. This is something I do. I have been on at least probably 85 trips, and every trip I print off the personal packing list when I'm packing. I could pack in my sleep. I usually pack everything, and then I pick out that list and I just run down through it, because invariably I've forgotten like really important things every once in a while. You just think you had it in there and you didn't. So make sure you actually print off that personal packing list, and you can find everything you want to know. And I'm sure you've already learned this, but in the resource tab on our website, look under important team information, and there's lots and lots of information there for you to review and to answer questions for you. Your group is going to be talking through WhatsApp, and so make sure you have that app on your phone, and make sure that you're in the team thread for texting and calls especially it's really important during the preparation part of your trip, and also when you're traveling. It seems like you're always texting each other and making sure everybody's getting together and what time you're supposed to meet such and such place. So make sure you have that WhatsApp app. And then if your team has a packing party planned, get that on the calendar, and be collecting your items for the team packing party. Oh, and just continue fundraising. Even if you've already raised all your personal funds, I'm sure your team could use more funds. There's always something, even if everybody's trip is covered, you might want to buy food packs. You might want to buy some extra special gifts for the translators, or something for the VBS things that you want to give to the kids or something like that. So keep working on the finances for your team. Also, continue working on refining your testimony. Though we've covered both the 15-second quick testimony and the 3-minute testimony, but you might be giving those testimonies when you're not prepared to, as far as on the field. They come at really strange times, like you might be walking around, and you just happen to meet somebody just sitting there on a log. This is an example that I've had before, and you start kind of talking to them through a translator, and before you know it, you're like, oh my gosh, I need to tell them about my testimony because it matches something that they're experiencing or whatever, and it just coincides. And so, man, to have that really practiced and kind of in your mind is really helpful. You might even meet somebody on the plane in the seat next to you going down there that you end up talking to and telling your testimony to. Oh, and I keep practicing that Portuguese. Somebody mentioned Duolingo, and that is just such a help. So keep practicing Portuguese. Even little phrases are great. Oh, and that's it. So thank you guys for being here today. Obrigada. And I think we're going to open it up for questions, if anybody has any questions. So you might want to unmute yourself.
We do have a few questions that I'm going to address from the chat.
Oh, good.
Sarah, I think we can stop recording.